Hello and welcome to our YouTube channel once again. Today we will be creating a drop-down menu with HTML and CSS. This is what the final version would look like. As you can see, a drop-down menu in services and in portfolio. So let's get started. To start with, we have an HTML file which has a nav tag, an h2, and a UL with 4 LIs and anchors. And we have a basic drop CSS file with the boilerplate code. This is what the output looks like. We have to convert this into this. Let's get started. So the first thing, let's apply a background color on nav. Let's take this color, a display flex on nav, justify content, and some align items. There you go. Let's give a class to this UL. Let's call it menu. On menu, let's apply list style none to remove the bullets. Let's give it a display flex so that the li can become horizontal. In the anchor tag inside menu, let's remove the underline, text decoration none. Let us also give them a color black. On the nav, we are applying a height of 50 pixels. That will make it look good. Also, let us apply some padding from the left and right side, 3 rems or 48 pixels of padding. Let us reduce it a little to 32 pixels. On the anchor, as we can see, the anchors are very close to each other. We need to separate them. So on the anchor, we will first apply a display because then it will accept margins and paddings. Let's give it some margin. Now 15 pixels from the top and bottom and 10 pixels from the left and right. I would also like to give them some margin, 5 pixels. Let us give them a little bit of styling. That is, when we hover over them, let's have a background color of black and the text. Let's change the text color to white. This is how these would look then. The reason I gave a 15 pixel padding is that I wanted to have a box like structure when we hover over it. That is the reason we gave it a top and bottom 15 pixels of margin. If you reduce it, this is what it would look like. You would see some gap on the top and bottom of each anchor tag. We did not want that, so 15 pixel it is. Let us also apply a font family. You can have absolutely any font family. We have applied Trebuchet. So this is about the initial styling. But where is the drop-down? For drop-down menu inside services and portfolio, we would need another UL inside service and portfolio. Let's give that drop-down menu class of drop-down. Inside it also, we would have the same structure of li and anchor. Some content here as well. As you can see, when we create the drop-down menu, this is what we get. The first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to separate this UL, this drop-down, from its parent li. Once again, I'm going to separate this UL from its parent li. Now, when I say separate, हम इसको li से अलग नहीं करेंगे, हम इसको li से बाहर नहीं निकालेंगे. No, Instead, we will go into the CSS and apply position on it. As soon as apply position absolute, you can see now the drop down is below the li, or it is separated from the li. But as is the case with position absolute, the parent must also have a position relative. So for the li inside menu, let's have a position relative. Now again, we do not want the bullet points, so let's remove that. List style, set it to none. There you go. Let us also apply the background color on the drop down, but this time let's have it a little bit darker than the parent. There you go. Let us apply some width on the ULs so that they might look a little bit better. There it is. The hover that we applied on the anchors would work on these anchor as well, as you can very well see. However, when we hover over these anchor, when we hover over the anchor of drop down, you can see some gaps on the right hand side. This is because, yes, the UL might have a width of 140 pixel. The LI and the anchor inside it does not. The UL might have a width of 140. The LI and anchor does not. So let's give drop downs LI as well as drop downs anchor the same width as UL. In that way, you can now see the color is applied on the full. As a matter of fact, it is going away beyond. It is spanning a little bit out. That is because you can see a gap on the left hand side. That is the margin that we applied on the anchor. So we'll have to set margin left and margin right of drop downs anchor to 0. So now you have a full black color when we hover over it. Initially, when the page loads, we do not want the drop down to be visible. So we'll apply a display none. And here comes the magic of sudo. We want the ULs to be visible. We want the drop downs to be visible when we hover over the LI. When we hover over the LI, then make the display of the child drop down, make the display of that particular LI's child drop down, change to block. That is, when we hover over services, you will see its child drop down being displayed. And when we'll hover over portfolio, you will see its child being displayed. To make it even better, let us apply a left 0. So now you will see services, the service drop down just below service, and portfolios drop down just below portfolio. This is how a basic drop down would look. However, if we go back to the original, you can see some sort of transition happening. The drop down appears to be coming from below and then going back again. To make the same thing happen here, the first thing we need is we need to remove the display property. Display is not animatable. You cannot apply an animation or transition to display. That means we cannot hide the drop down using display. But if you want to use this display, you will see the drop down being visible. We can still hide the drop down using properties opacity, setting it to 0, and visibility, setting it to hidden. There you go. And when we'll hover over the UL, when we'll hover over the LI, instead of setting the display to block, we would set the opacity again to 1. we will set the visibility again to visible. This way, you will still see the drop down coming and going, but still no transition. So let's apply the transition. On the drop down, we will say any changes will happen smoothly in, let's say, 400 milliseconds. What are the changes? That those we have already mentioned. And if you remember, we set the height of this navbar to 50. If I set the drop down to top 50, you will see no change in it. But however, if I change the top to 60, you will see the drop down going a little bit down. Then if I again do the opacity 0, sorry, and visibility hidden, you will see the drop down again hiding from the view. And then when we'll hover over the li along with opacity 1 and visibility visible, what we'll do is we will set the top, which was originally at 60, we'll set the top at 50. That is, the ul will now move 10 pixel up when we'll hover over the li, and this is what the animation will create. There you go. This is it for this tutorial, guys. Thank you. Do come back tomorrow for another